And I would love to welcome everybody to today's session, which is Natural Stress Relief with Energy Tapping. Suzanne Gundersen is our host, and my name is Jennifer Norman. I'm the founder of the Human Beauty Movement. We are also known as the HBM. Now, the HBM is all about radical self-love, radical self-acceptance, and radical self-expression. We know that everything good always starts from a place in your heart. It starts from a place within, and we are energetic beings. And so that's why we're bringing you these kinds of wonderful wellness sessions so you can tap into that energy. Now, I'd love to introduce you to our host, Suzanne. She is a certified somatic wellness educator. She has experience in traumatic release solutions that help you rewire your body and rewrite your stories so you can experience breakthroughs, decrease symptoms, increase peace, and have more clarity and choice. So welcome, Suzanne. I am going to give the floor over to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hello, everyone. This is Suzanne Gundersen here. I'm going to be sharing my screen with you, but you'll still be able to see me. Here we go. And let's make this an interactive session. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat, and Jennifer's going to be monitoring them so we can answer them for you real time. But let's get started. So welcome to today's session on neuroenergy tapping. So just a little bit about me. I'm Suzanne Gundersen. I've been working in natural stress management now for over 15 years. What I do is I help people make breakthroughs to be able to experience, decreased symptoms and life with more genuine aliveness. And in my toolbox of things, I have lots of incredible things I've learned along the way, the last 15, 20 years that I've used on myself. And here I am and bringing it forward and sharing it with you all. So one of them is neuroenergy tapping, and that's what we're going to go over with today. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. What is neuroenergy tapping? Well, very simply, it's a self-use acupressure technique that calms the mind and relaxes the body. A self-use acupressure technique that calms the mind and relaxes the body. And when your mind is calm, right, it's not that monkey mind, your mind is calm. And when your body is no longer squeezed in with stress and experiencing stress symptoms, well, then you can experience more peace, clarity, and even choice. It's when you can have more curiosity. So let's unpack unpack it a little bit more. Literally tapping on energy points of the body sends a calming message to the brain, which shifts how you feel and experience stress. There's 3 layers of the brain I'm going to share with you. The first is that survival brain. It's just that automatic, we blink, we swallow, we digest. We don't have to tell the body to do these things. It just does it. Also, it's our survival response. We've got a nerve in our body called the vagus nerve, and it's constantly sending messages up to this part of the brain that says, am I safe or am I not safe? Am I safe or am I not safe? Am I safe or am I not safe? And if you're not safe, then it goes into a survival strategy. But if you're safe and calm, then the body stays nice and relaxed. So when we're tapping, we're really starting to relax that nervous system, that brain-body survival response. The next layer of the brain is this limbic brain, which is the emotional brain. There's a gland in there called the amygdala. It's often coined the emotional fire alarm. So when we're stressed out and our body is in that survival response, our emotions and limbic system can often get engaged. And so our emotional range can be like a swinging pendulum, very, very wild, sometimes out of control. So when we're tapping, we're literally shifting how you feel and experience that thing that's stressing you by turning off that fire alarm. So tapping can directly connect with that amygdala gland and say, hey, fire alarm, let's turn it off. And so the emotions become a little bit more regulated, a little bit more controllable, a little bit more understandable. And what happens when we're stressed also, this thinking part of our mind called the neocortex layer of our brain goes completely offline. And you'll know this because maybe you're stressed out and you're like, I have to make a decision about something. And you go, oh, okay, I'll just make this decision. And then you're like, okay, that's not going to be really the best decision. I'll have to redo that later. And why is that? And that's because when we're stressed, the thinking mind gets very cluttered. We get brain fog, mental confusion. There's just not a lot of clarity there. And the reason for that is because the body is so overwhelmed. The emotions are just swinging like a wild pendulum. Of course, we can't think clearly. So tapping can help us calm the body, regulate the emotions a little bit more, and be able to bring open some new pathways of thinking. So it literally, tapping helps us to be able to really reprogram our stress into peace and wisdom. And there's a brilliant word out there called neuroplasticity, which is, it's just, for me, it's just life-changing, because we no longer have a life sentence to our stress. It's neuroplasticity means that the brain and the body have an ability to adapt and stretch and change. And what a relief that is, right? We're no longer going to be on the hook for whatever it is that we're stressed about, because we can change. Now, I want to make a little footnote here that neuroenergy tapping is my unique method, and not all tapping is created equal. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more in future slides. So a little bit about the history of tapping. It's been around for about 50 years, believe it or not. I know some people are newcomers, like, really, it's been around that long? It's rooted in Chinese medicine, and it uses traditional acupuncture points, except we use our fingertips to engage these energy points instead of needles. So back, in the 70s, Roger Callahan first discovered tapping. And then his student was Gary Craig. And Gary was the one that coined emotional freedom technique, EFT, which is kind of the popular way of people talking about tapping. And Gary had a lot of wonderful students as well. And they all have different kind of flavors of how they've called tapping. The most recent is the brother and sister team of Nick and Jessica Ortner. They have the tapping solution, and they have it every year. They've actually had it for, I think, almost 18 years now. So they've been doing it for quite a while, but they're really popularizing it and making it more mainstream, especially in the United States, where we have been a little bit behind from some of the other countries that are a little bit more open and have adopted tapping earlier on. But ultimately, tapping uses the same energy system, while there can be different approaches. And just as we've seen tapping evolve in the last 50 years, it's going to continue to evolve as we evolve in our own consciousness and awareness, right? So I want to talk a little bit about stress. We say this word, it's a 6-letter word. We throw it around: stress, stress, stress. What does it really mean? Well, stress is the body's reaction to perception. But I'm going to take that word a little bit deeper and say it's the body's reaction to something called neuroception, because perception kind of infers that everything is done through the mental mind. And that's just not true, because neuroception infers that we have a nervous system with nerves, all a complex network of nerves that are all over our body, that are constantly detecting, without your conscious awareness, what's going on inside of you, outside of you, relationally between you and others. It happens consciously, unconsciously. So I want you to really learn that stress is the body's reaction to neuroception. Now, that's not my word. That was coined by Dr. Stephen Porges, who's the author of the polyvagal theory. And I can go down that rabbit hole with you another time. I'm a real big neuroscience geek. But the body's reaction to neuroception just means that our body is detecting, without your conscious awareness, what's going on inside of you, outside of you, relationally between you and others in your environment. And it's reacting. Now, I'll put this into action a little bit. So if I screamed out loud right now, your physiology would change in a split second, right? Immediately, your body would squeeze in, your muscles would tense, maybe your heart rate would increase, possibly some cortisol would get released, which is that stress hormone. Your emotions could change, right? You might be like, what's going on here? Am I worried, panic, anger, frustrated, unclear? And your thinking mind would go offline. So that's neuroception in action. And all of that is messaging itself through the vagus nerve up to your brainstem to say, hey, I'm not safe anymore. Go defend threat. So this is a really cool picture of our amazing human stress response. So down at the bottom layer here, this is our most modern survival strategy. It's called social engagement. It's our ventral vagal nervous system. And I'm not going to get too sciencey here on you, but ultimately we have evolved to being human. And in our human beingness, our most modern survival strategy is to look to another person to find safety. It's just, we live in times where we're just not knowing who we are authentically. We don't trust each other. We don't trust ourselves. And so what happens is we don't have a big capacity for trust and a big capacity for consistent trust, the way that our body, our human body needs it. So we end up living in more ancient strategies of survival, like fight, flight, or freeze. So ultimately, we want to be able to come down out of those older ancient strategies and really connect with our human beingness and social engagement, not social media, social engagement, which means that if I'm stressed, I want to look to your face and have your face tell me through a pleasant facial expression, through a pleasant tone of voice, through a regulated heartbeat, through nice, easy breathing, that my body is safe. Until then, we're trying to wrestle between fight, flight, or freeze, which are very ancient strategies that have nothing to do with verbal communication at all. It's really, this is where, we can get stuck. So have you got stress? I mean, who doesn't these days, right? We wake up to global awareness on top of living extremely overstimulated lives. We're literally living with a low-grade stress response all the time, low-grade chronic stress. And we're either having coping strategies, maybe even some unhealthy coping strategies, or maybe we're experiencing trauma symptoms, or we're really stuck, or maybe we have some chronic stress, things that are kind of just ongoing and not resolving. So back to tapping. There's 3 foundations of tapping. Remember, this is my version of what I call neuroenergy tapping. So I've broken it out after doing tapping for 20 years. This is how I understand it best, and this is how I share it with people that I work with. So the first foundation of tapping is Chinese medicine, as I mentioned before, because our bodies are energy. And we use our fingers to help that energy in our body begin to circulate and flow. Stuck and stagnant energy is when we experience pain or disease, physically, emotionally, or mentally. The second foundation of tapping is in modern psychology, which is how we think and we learn and we communicate. And we do that through pictures in our mind and little movies that we've recorded, or sounds that we've heard, or voices we've recorded, or even sensations we experience in the body. And it's all interpreted through our own communication with ourself. And then the third foundation of tapping is in neuroscience, meaning that we have a nervous system. It has pathways and patterns and things that it does for efficiency because we trained it to do it that way. And so all 3 of these things are going on at the time when we're stressed. And that's where I came up with the 3 M's of tapping. So when we're tapping, we are really working on the 3 M's of tapping. So remember, the first foundation of tapping is in Chinese medicine, which means we have an energy body. And to that energy body, we have a momentum. Right? So imagine you're sitting at a red light and you're like, I want it to be green. And you can feel that kind of revving up in your body, but you're not going anywhere. That you can feel that revving up of your energy. And so when we're tapping, what we're doing is we are regulating the momentum of the energy body to be at a pace that personally works for you. Maybe you're somebody who's going way too fast, like a speed car, or maybe you're just putting along on the side of the road, but neither are really your personal rhythm and flow. And so tapping helps us to be able to balance your energy and to be at a pace that personally works for you. The second M of tapping is rooted in modern psychology, right? As I mentioned, we give specific meaning to things that we see through pictures and movies and sounds that we have recorded that are based on our personal experiences. For example, I say the word dog. Now you have a dog on your mind, right? But how come we're not thinking the same dog? How come your dog is not a white Labradoodle, right? Aren't all dogs white Labradoodles? I mean, we communicate in common language what we think words mean, but we're really only experiencing them based on our own internal references. And those references are pictures and movies and sounds and noises and sensations in our body and experiences in our body. So when we're tapping, the second M of tapping is meaning. We've given specific meaning to our stress. So when we're tapping, we're helping to detach from that specific meaning to help kind of wiggle it free and integrate and harmonize it with the rest of the entire energy body, because we know that there's more than one kind of dog, metaphorically speaking, right? But we get stuck on our dog. This is how it looks. This is what it sounds like. This is what it feels like. And that's what's causing the stress. So tapping helps you to detach and wiggle free from that specific meaning, helping you rise up to broader perspective. And that's when you get some relief and more peace and wisdom. The third M of tapping is memory. And I don't mean memories. I mean that our body has a nervous system. Remember, I said the third foundation of tapping is in neuroscience. So our body has a nervous system with many pathways of things that it does to remember how to be you. For example, how do you get to the grocery store? Do you get in your car and plug into the GPS, take me to the grocery store? Or do you just get in your car and you go? But how do you remember how to get there? How do you know how to get there? It's because our body memorizes how to do what we do the most. Sometimes that's great. It takes us to the grocery store. Sometimes it's like, oh, I walk into that room and I just have that same reaction of anxiety, that same reaction of panic, that same worry. Or I look at my bank account and I say, oh my gosh, my body has the same reaction. So when we're tapping, we're helping to relax some of those stressed pathways, how the body has memorized them to be. So when we're tapping, we are regulating the momentum of the energy body. We're helping ourselves detach from the specific meaning that we've given that stress. And we're helping also to relax some of those survival and stress pathways that have been memorized within us and open us up to other newer pathways that we can create. So let's get into the technicals of tapping. Remember, our bodies are energy because we're energy. We've got these rivers of energy that flow from our head to our feet. They're called meridians. And we've got hundreds of points all over the body, and they're all interconnected. Now, if you look at the chart on the right, you might say, hey, Suzanne, I've been doing tapping for a while. You're missing like a lot of points here. Great. If you know more points, use more points. There's lots of them. I like to use the main fight or flight points. So let's practice together. You're going to take your two fingers, either hand, index and middle finger, and you're going to start tapping between your eyebrow. And I want you to tap about 5 to 10 times. I want you to hear that padding sound. Hear that padding sound? I want you to really engage that energy meridian. This is the bladder meridian, and it represents emotional trauma. And then you're going to take your fingers and tap on the side of the eye on your temple here. Now, yes, you can use both sides. Yes, you can switch sides. Don't get fancy on me today. It's okay. You want to tap about 5 to 10 times, or 5 to 20, and then tap under your eye. Sorry, the side of the eye is the gallbladder meridian, and it represents anger. Under the eye is your cheekbone. It's the stomach meridian, and it represents anxiety. And then take all 4 fingers and just tap between your collarbones. This is the kidney meridian, and it represents fear. And then you take one hand and you squeeze the opposite wrist a few times, 3 or 4 times. And those are the points that I like to use, right? We're looking at emotional trauma, anger, anxiety, fear. I mean, those are the powerhouses, right? That we're trying to harmonize and integrate into more relaxed state of being. And like I said, if you know more, you might be like, hey, Suzanne, you missed the one under the nose and under the chin and here and there. Great. If you know more, use more. But I like to use these points. Okay, so before we get started, we're actually going to do some tapping together. I want you all to connect with something that feels good. Maybe it's a good memory or a good feeling. It doesn't have to be like a monumental event. You're like, I don't have any good feelings today, Suzanne. If not, look at the pictures I have on the screen here. Maybe you connect with one of them and go, oh, I just like that floating feather. Or I just like that tranquil water with the stones in it. Or just like daydreaming with some clouds. I just want you to connect with something that feels good. For me, it's floating. I love the sensation of floating, whether it's in the ocean, a lake, a pool. I just like floating. But maybe you find something that makes you feel good. And I want you to ask yourself, when you connect with this thing that makes you feel good, how do you know it makes you feel good? How do you recreate that right now? Is it something that you're seeing as a movie in your mind? Is it something that you're hearing? You have some voices. Somebody said something nice to you, or laughter. Maybe that's something that makes you feel good. Or maybe you just feel kind of deep calm and peace. Maybe it's like lying in Shavasana at the end of a yoga class. You're like, oh, yes, this is so nice now. So just find something that feels really good and ask yourself, how do I know this? How do I know it feels good? And focus on the best part of it. And make that a 10 on a scale of 0 to 10. If 0 is like, oh, it's okay, and 10 is like, it's amazing, make it a 10. And then give it a little movie title name. Maybe you call it peace, or maybe you call it ease or flow or whatever you want. Give it a little movie title. And if you're there with us right now and you have something that's at least higher than a 6 that makes you feel really, 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 really good, then I want you to just focus on it and squeeze your wrist a few times, right? Perfect. Now put a pin in that, and I want you to remember this best feeling because we're going to use it in our tapping. So I teach tapping in 4 easy steps. Step number 1 is I want you to notice something that bothers you. And please do not pick like a 20-year, 30-year problem in your life today. Just find something that's maybe bothering you. Somebody said something to you or cut you off, or I don't know, someone's gotten under your skin recently. Just notice something that bothers you. And ask yourself, how do I know that this bothers me? What are you doing to create this thing? And it's not happening right now, but it happened or it's happening. How do you know? Maybe you see a movie in your mind. Maybe you see a picture, a slideshow. Maybe you hear some voices or noises. Maybe it's your own voice. Maybe you feel some sensations in the body. Maybe you notice yourself holding your breath or squeezing in or getting a little fluttery. Whatever it might be. Step number 1 is notice something that bothers you and how it bothers you. And that thing that bothers you, step number 2, give it an intensity number on a scale of 0 to 10. I invite you to pop into the chat. What's your intensity number? 0 is kind of like, doesn't bother me. 10 is like, it really bothers me. Feel free to pop that number into the chat and let us know. And then step number 3 is I want you to go to the part that stands out the most. You want to go to that part where you're like, oh, not there. Oh, that's the worst part. Oh, that I don't like that, because the closer to the momentum, meaning, and memory that's holding this thing together, you have to press on it just a little bit. So go to that part that stands out the most. And while you're there, please have something that's at least a 6 or higher, focusing on the part that stands out the most. Take your 2 fingers, tap between your eyes, and repeat out loud after me. And say, this thing that bothers me. It really, really bothers me. And then tap on the side of the eye. This thing that bothers me. Everyone that's involved. What they said. What they did. What they didn't say. What they didn't do. And then tap under the eye. This thing that bothers me. How I know it bothers me. What it looks like. What it sounds like. What it feels like. And then tap on your collarbones. This thing that bothers me. I'm willing to let it go from every cell of my body because I deserve peace. And then take your hand and squeeze the opposite wrist a few times. Take a nice breath, blow it out. Say the word clear. Now go pop on over to your happy memory and go enjoy that happy memory. And just be in that wonderful experience. Try and make it as strong as you can, higher than a 6. The best part of it, it feels so, so, so good. This wonderful thing. And while you're there, tap between your eyes, repeat out loud after me and say, this wonderful experience. And then tap on the side of the eye. It's all mine. Tap under the eye. I can have it anytime I want. And it feels so good. And tap on your collarbone, and it's all mine. And then grab your wrist and squeeze it a few times. Say your little movie title word, whatever it is, or you can just say peace. And then just exhale. Now go back to the thing that was bothering you. And notice what stands out. What's the number now? And feel free to pop into the chat and tell us. I saw a lot of 8s in the chat. Maybe it's a 7 or a 6 or a 4. Or maybe you have more information now about what actually happened. Like, oh, wait, now I know what's really made me upset about that. I know what really bothered me about that. because tapping is going to bring more clarity, right? It's going to help you really focus on what is the problem. Great. So we have some lower numbers back down to 6s and 5s, and that's great. So that leads us to our next slide here, which is that here is the process that we're following. Number one is we noticed a stress and we asked ourselves, how do we know it? And we gave it an intensity number. We focused on the part that stands out the most, often the worst part. And then we did a little tapping, and then we went to our best feeling thought. And now we're at point number 3 here, which is there's still some left, Suzanne. It's not gone away. Well, you know why it hasn't gone away? Because there's still momentum, meaning, and memory. And so we need to do the next layer because we need to keep resolving and releasing, resolving and releasing. So notice what's ever left. You have 6s and 5s and 7s and whatever. How do you know it's a 6? How do you know it's a 7? How do you know? Is it something that you're seeing in your mind? Is it something that you're hearing? Something that you're experiencing? Focus on how you know. The better that you aim, the more that you aim, the more you're going to get close to that momentum, meaning, and memory that's holding this thing together. So just notice what's left. And often what's left has a lot of resistance because you're like, well, this really happened and I'm really mad about it and I want to stay mad about it. And so don't make me be happy about it. That's not going to happen. So there's some rub there. So just notice whatever's left. Notice your 7s and your 6s. Focus on the part that stands out the most. Take your 2 fingers, tap between your eyes, repeat out loud after me and say, it's still there. This thing that bothers me, it hasn't gone away yet. It's still there. And then tap on the side of the eye, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. It's still there. I know it so well. And then tap under your eye. Don't make me let it go. What will happen if I let it go? And then tap on your collarbone. But in this moment, I'm willing to let a little bit more of it go because I deserve peace. And then take your hand and squeeze the opposite wrist a few times. Take a nice breath. Blow it out. Say the word clear. Then go pop on over to your happy memory. That thing that makes you feel so good. And just relax and enjoy it. Just be in that nice, peaceful place. And then just grab your wrist a few times, say your little movie title word that you gave it, or just say peace, 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 peace. And exhale. And then notice whatever's left. Is there anything left? Or is it gone? Or do you have more information about it? So remember I said neuroenergy tapping is my unique method, and I call it the 3RP method. So what we're doing in the first 2 rounds of tapping is we're resolving and releasing. What are we resolving? Resolving how we know this stress. How do we know it? Through pictures and sounds and sensations and how we're creating it within us. And then we're releasing. What are we releasing? Resistance. Oh, is it safe to do it differently? Is it possible? Do I deserve it? You know, maybe you just like the struggle. Some people just like the struggle. And so you'll see at the bottom of the screen, we're going back and forth between resolving and releasing, because, you know, the resolving, we're kind of like clearing out the low hanging fruit. And then the releasing is the stuff that's really, really stuck on that tree. So you might need a few rounds of tapping to really bring this thing that bothers you down. But just as some of you were noticing 8s to 7s to 6s, and the numbers were slowly going down. If you just keep up with it, you will completely release it from yourself. And then magically, your mind is going to open up to some new clarity about it. And it's going to give you some more information. Go, well, okay, that doesn't bother me anymore. I don't feel the same way anymore. And I forgot to mention that, let me go back here real quick, that there are some symptoms that you might be experiencing that you can attribute to shifting from states of threat to states of calm and peace, which are a tingly sensation. Maybe you took a spontaneous breath, or maybe you yawned, or maybe you noticed yourself swallowing, or sighing, or just felt more physically relaxed and calm. And all of those are great symptoms and signals that the body is leaving states of threat and stress and moving into states of safe connection, that green zone of the nervous system that I mentioned, that safe social engagement. Let me go back here one more time. So once we are through resolving and releasing, and you go back and forth, right? You tap on the stress that you know, and then you alternate it with something that feels really good. You come back and check in, say how much is left. You do a little bit more tapping on letting it go. And then you go back to the thing that makes you feel good. So you go back and forth between the stress and something that feels good, the stress and something that feels good, the stress and something that feels good. And eventually that something that feels good is just going to take over the stress, because we don't ever let anything go. Newsflash. What we do is we harmonize it within ourselves so that it sits within us with more peace and wisdom. You don't ever, oh, I can't remember that horrible thing that happened to me. You remember it, but it doesn't trigger you that much anymore because you have resolved it within you. You have released the grip that you had on it, that you gave that specific meaning to. You've relaxed those stress pathways within you. So that way you can have more, calmness and peace and wisdom about it. Once you get to that point where you're just like, wow, that thing bothered me and I'm okay with it now, you'll notice that your mind is going to open up to a new way of thinking about it. And it's at that point you can reframe what you were experiencing to have more wisdom. And then when you think about this experience that used to bother you, you can project the result into the future to say, oh, now I know why. And so if it happens again, you can live life with more wisdom because you're going to project that wisdom into your future. You'll take the, let's say, healing through this process into the future with you. And then when you're there, you can certainly tap on, safe and allowing peace into your life. But I don't know where people are all at, so I don't want to do that tapping right now. But let's see, I'm going to read some things. Neat. Great, so some numbers were going lower. That's wonderful. And feel free to pop any questions into the chat. I know Jennifer's been looking at that. So what can tapping shift? So many things, right? It can certainly help you relieve anxiety symptoms, can help you to transform trauma, can help you to build some confidence and worthiness, and certainly can help with all kinds of stress, mom stress, family stress, relationship stress, work stress, financial stress, health stress. And it really is doing one specific thing. It is shifting your body from disempowered states to empowered states. And when we're empowered, we can feel like we're using all of our agency in the moment, and we're no longer distracted by things that are keeping us sideways. And simply, how to use tapping? 2 different ways. One is in the moment of your triggers, anytime, anywhere. Notice yourself in that stress mode, start to tap on a few tapping points. Now, I said a lot of words. You don't have to say what I said. You say your own thing or say nothing. And what that does is it starts to harmonize your brain and your body and your mind. And the second way you can use tapping is to really transform some unresolved trauma that are still living in your body and your brain. And we access that through memories. And I'm not talking about like go to when you're 5 years old. I'm talking like this happened to me yesterday, or this is happening to me now. And we use current memories to help us go back and do 3 things. What? Regulate the momentum, detach from the meaning, relax the memory pathways. That way we can experience more peace and clarity and choice. So a couple tips here on tapping. Number 1, be willing and persistent. Your stress does not, grow overnight. Second is try and aim at the part that stands out the most, often the worst part, because that's closest to what's holding that momentum, meaning, and memory together. Also, why do we say the negative versus the positive? Well, for the same reason why we don't go to the gas station when we have a full tank of gas. We have to get rid of some of the gas before we can fill in anything positive. So we really need to empty out the negative before we can refill with positive. Another tip is to make tapping a daily habit. Maybe by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, well, this is probably a good time. I probably accumulated some stress. You can just do a general round of tapping of let it go, or just let go of my stress or whatever might be standing out. Another question is, how long do you tap? Well, until you maybe experience some of those shifts, the yawning, the sighing, the states of physical relaxation. Another tip is please use your own words. There are a lot of tapping practitioners out there on YouTube with follow my tapping script. Well, guess what you're tapping along to? Their dog. You want to tap on your dog, not theirs. So you want to use your own words. So if you're really stressed about something, write it out and then tap on your own story in the words that you use, because your word is your wand. Also, people say, well, is it working? Is it not working? Remember some of the symptoms of and the signals of shifting from states of threat back to states of safe connection. Yes, it's working, but you don't turn a 600-mile-an-hour plane around on a dime. So give yourself a little bit of patience. And remember, not all tapping is created the same, right? What I share with you today is not going to be explained to you the same way by anybody else, but find what resonates with you and practice it. And certainly if you're working on something bigger, go connect with a certified tapping professional who can help you. Even the best surgeons can't operate on themselves, right? So do we have any questions before we go to our final slide? Jody says, glad you said we could use our own words because I forgot what yours were. Perfect. Don't remember my words. Remember your words.
Yeah, I do have a question. You mentioned yawning a couple of times, and I found that interesting because I find myself, whether it's breath work or yoga or whatever, yawning, I feel like my jaw is going to dislocate sometimes. And could you just touch for a moment on that? Because that seems to be my biggest purge, is yawning.
Yeah. When you say dislocate, what do you mean? Like you're just so open with your mouth?
It's just like I feel like I'm stretching it beyond my normal yawning. It's just like an unending yawning.
You may hold a lot of tension in your jaw. And so when it really starts to naturally loosen up, you can actually open your mouth a little bit wider. But yawning, we use yawning, the body yawns when we're shifting from any state. But when you have that kind of big sighing yawn, it's really saying it signals the body to calm down. So you may be somebody who, when you're stressed, you're folded in your jaw, or maybe you grind your teeth at night, or maybe you have TMJ. And so when you're finally able to loosen up that momentum, meaning, and memory, oh, well, now your mouth is like, I can really open up. So that's wonderful.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Let's see. How firmly are you meant to tap? Certainly, Amber, I don't want you to bruise yourself or knock yourself out, okay? But you want to tap on the point where you're actually hearing that padding sound. Hear that little padding sound. Not so soft that you're like not even hearing anything. When you hear that padding sound, you really know you're engaged in that energy meridian. And she asked, should I be feeling any sensation from the tapping on that site or area? No, not really. I mean, you might feel it just because you're tapping with enough pressure to hear the padding sound. You might feel something on your face or your body where you're tapping, but it really is, these are the energy points that are underneath the skin that are really starting to make movement, and that's where we're really affecting change. Mickey asks, is it true you need to drink a lot of water during tapping? It's always good to drink, water throughout the day, for sure. I mean, we don't drink enough water. I mean, I'm 52 years old, believe it or not. And I didn't grow up with like a water bottle in my backpack. We didn't have water like we did. We are just like, so do you have your water bottle? Drink water. I mean, I walked around dehydrated probably as a child in the 70s. I can't even imagine. So yes, we are always supposed to be keeping our body healthy, and our body needs water. Let's see. Mickey says, my friend was really angry about a situation on Sunday, and we used EFT, and her anger completely left. Isn't that relief? Isn't that amazing? I mean, just amazing. That's wonderful, Mickey. Adrian asks if these slides will be available. I know Jen is going to be recording it, so I'm sure that you can watch this again. Anything else? Okay. How do you approach chronic stress with tapping? So Karen asks, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, Karen. Right, so chronic stress is stuff that doesn't get resolved as quickly as, I found my keys after they were lost. Chronic stress is stuff that happens prolonged, ongoing. It's you wake up to it every day. It's this job I don't like. It's this relationship I have to get out of and I don't know how to get out of. It's this grief that I'm experiencing and I don't know how to resolve. It's stuff that just every day you wake up to it. So the question to ask yourself is, how do you know you have this stress? And you start to be able to resolve those acute pieces of that chronic stress. That way you have more capacity. And then you really get into the deeper layers of what's behind this chronic stress. Is it a health issue? Is it a relationship that you don't know how to get out of and you don't have anybody to help you process what's going on with it or even begin to process? So you can use tapping to be able to help you really start to feel more safe and relaxed in the moment. But for chronic stress, you might want to work with somebody to go a little bit deeper. But again, if you choose to do yourself, remember, write your story out in your own words and tap on that story. And I mean, don't hold back. Use curse words, use whatever your words you want. However you talk to yourself, write it down, throw up on the paper and just tap, 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 tap. And be gentle with yourself. Just do it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, take a break, maybe do it every other day. Be willing and persistent. Any final questions? Okay, cool. Well, thank you all for listening to me. My website is Transform Connections. Anybody that's been on this class today, I invite you to take advantage of a workshop special that I have. You can email me. I also have a free ebook on my website, Get Empowered with Neuroenergy Tapping. Explains everything that we just went through today. You can go and download that for free. I have a few online programs there too. Certainly keep in touch on my social medias. And again, thank you so much for listening to me today. Back to you, Jen.
Thank you so much, Suzanne, for today's wonderful session. I really appreciate everybody attending. Please continue to follow the Human Beauty Movement because Suzanne actually has an incredible tapping session coming up next month that I want all of you to join because it's about abundance and about manifesting more money. And a lot of us have a lot of deeply rooted self-limiting beliefs about earning what we deserve. And so tapping, she's going to show us how to use tapping to clear those blocks, to get the money that you want, to live the life that you really deserve to have. So go over to our Eventbrite or Universe page, take a look at that and sign up for it because it's going to be extremely special. And I encourage you to continue following the Human Beauty Movement wherever we are. Please, if you got some value out of this, tell your friends because we thrive by word of mouth. I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Suzanne. And
Thank you,
everyone. We hope to see you again soon.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.